Right, everyone, thanks for joining our monthly electrical safety call. Obviously, we've been doing this every month now I think this is like the fifth one. So thanks for joining. Hope we've got some new faces. A brief introduction. So most people that joined this came to our conference in Chantilly, Virginia in October last year. I think it was a really good 2-day event where we shared a lot of information, experiences, and collaborated. And I suppose through the community that's on this call, we discussed about how we continue that outside of there. And here we are. So we've tried to keep those ideas going. There's a lot of fresh, like some key topics that we were discussing at the conference, and they don't go away. So the purpose of this is to try and keep that communication going and keep working on those key actions, and hopefully come out with something tangible on the other side where we're actually moving the dial in electrical safety and making things better. But it is a marathon. It's not a sprint. So a bit of housekeeping, just so you know, everyone that's enrolled will get a recording sent after the call. Please use the post-call survey because we're focusing on the things that we've agreed as a committee or the most important items, I guess. But if you've got any input around what you want to see on the call, how we can bring in and make the experience better or get some information that we might not be talking about, let us know in the survey, and then we can make that as an action and improve things. Use the chat throughout, and if you want to speak, just raise your hand, and Ben can let you put your point across. The whole point in this is around collaboration, so we don't want just us as presenters talking to you guys and saying this is how you should do it, or the whole thing that we find in conferences is as presenter you give your experience and things like that, but there's people in the room that have got tons of experience. They've got SME experience in specific points that you may not have. So I really want to call on that, and if anyone can help, give your inputs. What's worked, what hasn't worked is really important because that's how we learn. And a big point in this is trying to get around lessons learned as well. So often they stay within your companies. We can be anonymous, even if you just give an experience that you've come across, it'll help out everyone on the community. So really promote that. And after each session, we will circulate the slides and the minutes also. We'll not cover this too much, but we've got essentially a steering committee who are working on some key work streams and driving this process, which we talk through each month. We then have a 1 hour call today. We'll present the work streams, recap on what we've done, but like we say there, we're actively promoting. If anybody wants to present something that's relevant to the work streams, so it could be about lockout and tagout, arc flash management, what you do in your workplace might have worked, it might not have worked. Is it scalable? Any of your experiences are key to helping other people out because no doubt people will be in the same position as you, either earlier on or further down the line. So we really want to promote that. So if you have got something, just let us know and we'll bring you on. Or if you wanted to present something in the future, that's what this is all about, trying to share our experiences to hopefully try and standardize, but learn from each other as well. So we will open it up to you guys and we'll review it each month to make sure that we're working on the right things. We'll do it once a month online. The intention is to meet in person to try and, I suppose, validate and commit to what we're doing. The community can work on what we're talking through, give us feedback and stuff, but the steering group will own the work streams just to give it a bit of a push to make sure we are still keeping these topics relevant and we're working on the right things. We will be having a conference in October, hopefully to be confirmed in the next 2 weeks, Ben, I would hope. But yeah, the aim ideally would be, last year we had this conversation and we've started it. It would be great to be 12 months down the line and actually reflect on where we are and that we're heading in the right direction. At least trying to work together to make our workplaces safer. So now we like to start these with a safety moment. So I'll hand you over to Wayne and he can take us through one that's hopefully relevant.
All right. Hey, Dan, thanks for that. Good morning, everyone, and good afternoon for all of us. I see we've got Mike's joining us from Switzerland, so that's pretty awesome. So yeah, this was brought to us. It's as we continue our efforts to grow in awareness around electrical safety and electrical incidents. This incident was brought to us to discuss. And please, if you have any thoughts to this or any questions about it or any comments, as Dan said, this is our meeting. It is for all of us on this call. We don't want to be the ones that are directing this and doing all the talking. So please don't hesitate to ask a question in the chat or raise your hand. Some of you may have seen events like this before in the past. So there's a lot of good lessons learned that come out of these, and we want to share those. So for what happened on this one, this particular one, the crews were getting ready to energize and load bank on medium voltage switchgear. The workers plugged as they were hooking up their phases. There were four sets of cable conductors, A, B, and C phase. And while they were hooking those up, they inadvertently hooked an A phase to a B phase and a B phase to an A phase. When they went to close the breakers, a worker heard a loud pop and turned and saw the cable conductor jumping off of the ground violently. All work was stopped, everything isolated, everything locked back out, put into safe mode, and then they started an investigation. They did notice too on the incident details. Again, there was four sets of cable conductors. This was a medium voltage switch gear, and they were load banking. And then they were had the cable conductors, A phase, B phase, C phase, are typically colored, as most of you know. But the UV light, these things sit out in the sun all day long, and they can fade. Labeling can fade, coloring can fade, and that's what happened in this one. During the root cause, they determined that a point-to-point verification was not done. The cable conductors, they didn't, make sure this is A phase to A phase and B phase to B phase, and etc. So some of the lessons learned that came out of that is making sure that number one, that first of all, your workers are authorized and trained to do these things. They've had their experience with these things, and they know that certain checklists have to be completed. One of which is, hey, am I isolating these correctly, and do I have them laid out properly? Am I doing my point to points to verify that I'm going to the right location? Equipment cables and connectors, right? You're inspecting those. If we see cable conductors are faded, they should be labeled. Obviously, you would want them labeled anyway to begin with on both ends. And then they're laid out in a fashion to where we can, hook them up accordingly, and the labels show and identify, and then your quick point to points as well. Planning and comms is very important, right? We're communicating when we're ready to go, how we're lining these out. Checkpoints again in a mop should have we done our continuity test? Do we know our load banks are hooked up correctly? And then all of that, like I just said, should be embedded into a mop where as they're going through the mops, they hit that point in the mop where it says, check cable conductors have, point to points been completed to verify cable conductors to load banks are in proper placement. So again, placement, cable routing, controlling the areas as well. We see a lot of load bank cables laying on the ground where they may not have a barricade, and workers can cross over those or step on them or trip them. Obviously, we don't ever want that. You want to barricade those areas off. And again, point to point should be completed when doing these lineups. So with that being said, let's open it up and see if we have any questions or any uh, communications about this. I'd love to hear if anyone's seen these before or have had any experience with like cable conductors popping off the ground when they're phased incorrectly.
What was the voltage on this, Wayne?
This was medium voltage. I want to say it was 13
13,
something.
13.8, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's interesting. And at which point did they blow off the cables then? So was that when they were energized from the supply?
That's what I was told. It was energized from the supply, and then they heard it at the load bank. And then when they turned, you could see the one phase of the cable conductor popping off the ground.
Just on that way, and I've got Carl that wants to speak, so I'm going to allow him to talk if that's all right.
Perfect.
Absolutely.
It did.
This is your area now, Ben.
Um, see if this works. Can you hear us, Carl?
I can hear you fine. I just wasn't able to. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Loud and clear.
Okay. Yeah, working in wind and solar, this is a very common thing that we have because everything's out in the UV all the time. And the one I've experienced this exact thing before. And one of the contributing factors was the worker in a standard tool set was not equipped with a marker. And so they had no way to be able to differentiate one from the other to mark it off. Didn't even have a ballpoint pen on them.
Hmm.
And so that became part of the checklist before you go out in your toolkit. You have to have a marker, you have to have means of labeling and that type of thing. And so we looked at it as sort of a training issue, but also as a resource issue, since we did not actually have a standardized set of resources for them to go out to work with the equipment. That's all I got.
Great point, Carl. Appreciate you for bringing that up.
Yeah. Oh, is it so is that as stringent controls with them being temporary rather than physically part of the system?
Honestly, it shouldn't be less stringent, right? Because load banks, temp power, they should be looked at as the same priority as we do permanent power, right? And when we're load banking, understanding we're load banking through permanent systems. So cable conductors like this load bank, let's just call them load bank cables, right? Should be if they are UV deteriorated, phase coloring deteriorated, they should at least be labeled on each end, A phase, B phase, proper gauge size, proper length of that cable. So all of that should be, and then maybe last inspection date on that label. And again, at both ends, those are the things that you want to see. And I appreciate Carl's point in making sure that at
Yeah.
minimum they have somewhere they can write, oh, this is A phase set one, B phase set three, whatever.
And who typically connects them up? Whose responsibility is that?
So there's an authorized worker or a load bank crew that are typically tasked with that, and they've had that experience and training on point to points, correct
Yeah.
hookup, layouts, barricading, and such.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, so there is a standard then. So there is an MOP that details typically steps to take, what you would do, then it forms part of your commissioning checklist then for to ensure that
Absolutely.
that's in place. Okay.
Absolutely.
So was it procedural then? Was it lack of competence in the persons? What was the kind? I know the investigation may be ongoing.
Well,
Um,
yeah, because I think there's more to it. Because I haven't heard, was there retraining? What was there a rush to get this done and the workers just hurried up because typically the right trained and authorized crew, they're going to know, okay,
yeah,
well, do we do our continuity test? Do we verify placement? In this case, with the industry the way it is, it could have been a rush situation where they were trying to hurry up because they had to get this load bank done so they can get to a next activity and commissioning, you know.
yeah. And sometimes you got to
Right.
make those dynamic risk assessments, don't you? Where there might be a change or a pressure that comes in that was unplanned, and then the person's on the end of it. I know I have, yeah, this isn't ideal. I would have done it this way, but yeah, a dynamic risk assessment. I'm competent, and often that's where these things creep in, isn't it? Where things
You're
don't go
absolutely
well.
Absolutely right, Dan. I mean, and more these days, we have to be methodical on our processes and procedures because we are going so fast. The industry is demanding, delivery, and as we're commissioning, we have to be methodical about what we do and how we do it, right? We just can't take the chances of, okay, it looks right, right? Is it right or is it not, right? That should be a go, no go.
Yeah. And Jose's referenced their synchronization. So like for that shore power to a vessel, to a submarine, or likewise if you're synchronizing generators, typically we'll use a synchroscope. I mean, a lot of them now are inbuilt on the like auto sync units or check sync units that would synchronize things like generators and stuff like that. But whether phase rotation was an issue here, possibly Win, um, could have been, I guess.
I mean, it could have been. Well, I mean, if it's phase to phase cross, it's not necessarily the rotation, right?
Yeah.
It would be, yeah, because this was just a phase-to-phase cross,
Yeah.
like a phase-to-phase short, maybe.
No, it's definitely an interesting one because we use these all the
Hmm.
time, don't we? It's
We do.
it's something that if it's happened once, it could happen again. So really appreciate you sharing it. And has anybody else got anything else to comment on this in the chat, or whether they want to speak? If not, we'll move on. Is there anything left in the Q&A, Ben?
No, no.
No, brilliant. Thanks, Wayne.
We'll circle back if need be.
Okay, appreciate that. And I guess this is a good point there where we're talking about the commissioning checklists. It kind of leads us nicely into work stream 1, where we're looking at commissioning, transition, and turnover. So I'll just hand over to Alan. We've done this in the past where one of the early ones, we shared a commissioning to turnover checklist that's utilized, where the aim of one of our actions was trying to standardize a checklist that's in place. Again, we're not perfect. The people on this call, nobody is. So I'll hand over to Alan, who can walk through again the checklist that we shared last time. And then the aim is, we'll open it up to the floor to say, is there anything that you think looks like it could be improved upon? Is there anything that should be added, taken off? Just bring some of your experiences of what you've seen. And then after the call, we'll share it out with a bit of a data gathering process to see if there's anything that you think we could modify on there to maybe try and standardize a process. But yeah, I'll hand over to Alan now.
Hey, thanks, Daniel. Can everybody see my screen? Yeah, so we presented this a couple weeks ago. So, as again, we're moving fast, right? At the speed at which everything's going. And if you don't have a process in place, you're going to miss things. So, I previously had built this turnover to ops checklist because, we had an incident where we had an incident, and then we realized in the investigation there that just something as the vendor onboarding procedures weren't followed whatsoever at all, because all the new operations teams and when they took over the first phase of the building, they didn't even know that existed. They didn't even know they had to do it. They didn't even know what was going on because it was all brand new people onto the job site. And so we trusted that IOPS is going to take care of things. Well, they didn't. And, we realized we had a lot of gaps. So how do we make sure we don't have a gap? We have a checklist, right? If you feel like you're going to miss something, just add it to the checklist, right? And then follow the checklist. So we developed this checklist, and then, prior to turnover of the first phase of a building before operations takes their first control of it, it's okay, let's go through the checklist. What's missing? What are you struggling with? Let's identify some risks 30 to 60 days prior to turnover to make sure that we've got a plan in place to mitigate those risks and make sure that nothing falls through the cracks. So this checklist is meant to be an 80-90% solution, right? This is a general checklist, but then what I tell my teams is that you've got to drill down on your individual site specific requirements and add things to this, right? If you want a PP assessment and you want to create 10 sub-steps underneath there, make 11A, 11B, 11C, 11D, right? Where I see the ops teams do this is when they got to create their MOPs and SOPs, list out every single MOP that's required to be done. And say where's I'm not sure I forget where it is in here, but the point is you're going to call it every single MOP and then assign the person who's directly responsible for that. And this is your tracker, right? It's a one-stop shop so that anybody in your organization from construction, commissioning, operations can all look in here, and you meet regularly and more frequently as you approach that turnover. And then you use this. It's a giant risk register is what it is, right? The risk is ops isn't ready to take control of the site. Well, how do we mitigate that? Build a checklist. So for training, operational readiness. Oh, sorry, this is an EHS tab. I thought I was in the operations tab. That's why I got a little lost. Sorry. Okay. So, things like air permits, hiring your manager, hiring new hire orientation, getting all those things. Here's the EOPS and SOPs, right? So blow this up to as many items as you need to track things as specifically that you have, right? Things like janitorial contracts, right? The idea is that the operations is ready day one, and that the client is not walking into still a construction site. Yes, there's construction going on in subsequent phases, but the paper towels are stocked and filled, the coffee's ready to go. It's those little details and tracking those little things, because if you've paid attention to the little things, you've paid attention to the big things. So it's I think it's a really good process to try and reiterate, and then you just try to improve it every single time. Hey, let's add this. We kind of missed that, right? And what I also do is have a hot wash with the operations team 30 to 60 days after turnover and say, okay, what's going on? What do you wish we would have talked about 60 days prior to turnover that you've now recognized? And every now and then there's something small, but it's something like, okay, yeah, that should be added to the checklist, because it was something that was unique to just either this site, or it's something that should apply to everybody. And here it talks about commissioning and, making sure, I can't stress enough, operations needs to be part of commissioning. They need to be looking over the shoulder, just be present, watch the plant, watch everything get loaded up with load banks, ask questions. The vendors are right there. Those are the experts that know exactly how the ins and out of this equipment works, right? Participating as much as possible, not just hanging out to wait to see what's for lunch, Security and compliance, that's becoming more and more of a thing. Things I'm seeing in the industry is no longer can you have remote access. Everything must be done on site. So you've got to have like a local construction network. You got to have all your wireless access points and everything. So video surveillance and, there's a lot of expensive equipment going in these data halls now, and the security requirements just seem to keep escalating. Same thing with the IT network. We talked a little bit about that. And then EHS. So making sure you've got all your inventory, you've got everything, all the training done. This typically where there's like questions come up and as to, what type of signage and inventory do we need to have, and what specific training, where do the spill kits need to go, AEDs, first aid kit, all your safety stuff, your 40 cal suits, or get those stuff ordered, and make sure you've got enough PPE for everybody. So yeah, this is meant to be just, so one more thing I wanted to talk about this, something that I'm actively doing right now. So I have a new job starting tomorrow. As a consultant now, is the liquid cooling side of all this. There's a huge demand for playbooks and requirements and checklist for liquid cooling for construction, commissioning, and even operations. So I'm actively working with a client right now to develop that for them. I'm hiring people with the expertise that have done liquid cooling since the beginning in the US. So I've got somebody working with me that's commissioned the very first liquid cooled site in the United States, right? And co-authored every single liquid cooling document at that hyperscaler. And so we're accumulating multiple people with that knowledge to then help other data centers out there help with this and incorporate liquid cooling specific requirements with the cleanliness and chemistry control into this checklist as well. So going forward, Dan, once I've got some, a completed template, I'd love to try and share that if people are interested as well.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good idea. And like we say, you've obviously got a lot of knowledge. You've got specific knowledge, obviously things you're talking about. But again, people might have had experience in other parts of that that are involved in the commissioning process where where they might chip in and go, have you thought of this? So I think it's great that you're sharing this, and I think as it evolves over time, like you say, it'd be great just to revisit it again with what's changed and what's been improved upon.
Is it all right, guys, if I unmute Kevin, please, with a question, if that's all right?
True.
Can you hear us, Kevin?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. So thank you for this. I really appreciate it. A couple of things that I'm seeing, I think this is a great commissioning checklist. One is lockout tagout procedure. So for more than one source. And so like how is that being done in general. From what I'm seeing in SOPs and MOPs, all I see is lockout, provide lockout. But you need to provide all your steps, how many locks, like that kind of stuff in order to do that. And there may be other energy that you have to lock out as well. And so in the data center, how are we doing it? I've seen it a couple different ways, but I would like to see, like what this group would be doing, or like how that is being done.
At which stage is that, Kevin? Is that in operations?
Just gonna ask the same thing.
Or is this when we're going from construction, like commissioning, and then handing it over to operations?
So it should be a handoff from construction to operations. So in my previous life, I was in manufacturing, and so you'd have new equipment. That new equipment has to come with lockout tagout procedures, and then you transfer those lockout tagout procedures to the site there with that. I don't see that like in the data center world, and the commissioning side is not supplying the lockout tagout procedures.
Yeah, the lockout tagout, it's typically, there's two distinct phases, right? There's construction and commissioning, and then there's operations. I've seen, the auto lotto type systems are very popular during construction. They don't necessarily always transfer that then to the client for operations. The client may just, because it's not as extensive, you're not having as many extensive tagouts. So it's really two different things. And you typically commission, it's the electrical contractor that's usually running lockout tagout with an energy marshal. And the commissioning agent is just verifying that, all right, I'm about to go do some work on this equipment. Is it properly lockout tagged out? They'll walk the line and make sure it's tagged out. And if it's inadequate, they'll catch it and make sure that we update it. But typically that's kind of like an initial commissioning kickoff. Hey, what's our standard for lockout tagout? When we need to shut down a UPS, how are we going to lock that out? What breakers are we going to go to? And you can establish the standard procedures. And then there might be times where you have to deviate from that. And you got to make sure you're like, hey, something's different. We're tagging this out differently. Is everybody aware, or whatever's going on? So I think it's important to call out those different scenarios. I see some some projects at the end of the day, they want to lockout tag out all the equipment as upstream as possible. So, establishing on night mode, what does that look like? So, hey, the locks must be applied on the following breakers. And that could change week to week or even day to day on a project, depending on where what equipment is energized or not.
I guess it involves I suppose it really relies on the client's involvement in that the construction commissioning and process, because otherwise when you hand it over, it's a case of we now need to isolate that. How do we do it? And then you've got to go from scratch generating your MOPs or your SOPs on how to do that. So I think it is that process, isn't it, of making sure they're documented in the clients or whoever's going to be operating the facilities in operations on their documentations and templates ready for that go live date. So already they've got that list of approved MOPs and SOPs ready to go for day one. That's probably because it's their responsibility, isn't it? Obviously the construction side, they're trying to, in the commissioning side, their roles are to get a finished product over to the client at whatever completion date. But the operations side's kind of, it's not their responsibility, but it's the responsibility of others, isn't it, to make sure that all ties together. So does anybody else have anything different to how they do it, how it works in that commissioning to handover phase that might help Kevin out?
I'm just going to unmute Carl again if that's all right.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, the way that we approach it, and keep in mind, I come from a little different side than data centers, but what I do includes data centers. We have one set of lockout tagout that goes for initial energization, basically the act of actually commissioning stuff and removing it in. We have another set of lockout tagout for normal operations for the stuff that we can expect to have happen for various scenarios. And then there's another set of lockout tagout procedures for abnormal conditions. And the abnormal conditions is what requires your qualified electrical workers that have a incredible responsibility because you have to assume that every single energy isolating device is not properly operating and that there is something else bleeding into the system. So the number of checks that you put into that goes dramatically up, and the equipment required to do it, the PPE and everything else like that goes dramatically up. So there's 3 different sets of conditions that we plan for and 3 different sets of documentation. And then also the competencies that we require of the people to do that also change. And the last scenario is the most picky. The first scenario, one of the big things is to get the initial engineers out there so that they can observe it the first time it goes on, so that they can learn from what they did and to be able to opine as to how it was supposed to happen if something happens that did not go the way it was anticipated. And what's happened in the past is that wires put in according to the drawing, but the drawings were wrong, and you ended up with phases that were landed in other machinery, other controls where it should have been. You got A phase, B phase go into one thing, and the C phase is going someplace else, where you end up with ground loops or that type of thing. So having the engineers right at that time during that first commissioning, as part of that, taking the lockout tagout off and livening it up has been extremely beneficial. They hate doing it, and it's extra cost, but it's been extremely beneficial. All I got.
No, that's perfect. Really appreciate that, Carl. A big thing that happens in the UK is there's a big emphasis on who's in operational control of an electrical network at any time. So I mean, in your area, Carl, so in renewables, over here, it's pretty good. So if that's going to go from construction over to an operational, whoever's going to control that network, they would utilize a document to say whose electrical safety program or electrical safety rules contains that part of the network or all of the network. So they would use like a safety rules inclusion certificate as an example, which would say from the point of coupling with the utility provider to maybe the full network or to a boundary point that belongs to this electrical safety program. And you might get some transition over that, things like if it's a wind farm, as an example, might fall under the wind turbine, the LV side might fall under the wind turbine safety rules. And it just makes it really clear around who's got everything. So who's got to prepare, control, operate, and maintain the documentation, like your MOPS and your SOPs around that bit. Again, it's probably the scale that data centers are moving at. Maybe that's just a piece that needs to, if that's what you're seeing, Kevin, maybe that's just a bit that needs to be improved upon down the line. But maybe it'd be good to know if some people do it well or if some people are finding this, as common throughout. No, that's great. Yeah, I've just seen that there, Carl. So there must be a single person in charge for the lockout and tagout. So similar process, but it's that bit, isn't it? So you might have a really good person in charge of lockout and tagout in the commissioning phase. All good, but we've got to make sure that that's then consistent when it's handed over. And if it is a case of someone's using a digital tool, and then it's just, the operations teams aren't paying for that, so it just gets taken away and you lose everything that's been done. Maybe there just needs to be some thought around the continuity from the incoming ops team, I guess, that takes over from there. Is there any other points around that, Ben?
No, I think we're all good to continue.
No, I really appreciate that. So what we're going to do is, again, it's a good start of a 10, what Alan's shared, and it might be great. It might be a finished product for a lot of people, but be really interesting. But we'll send it out after with some form of follow-up. What we're trying to do is just get feedback from everyone to identify where those key points are, where we're getting issues, especially through this high risk phase of the operation, and then also see how we can standardize that into a standard checklist. So we're trying to, I suppose, gather data to make this something that we can share and all call upon when we need that. So thank you. We'll now look at again, there's not much to talk around on this, but workstream 2, where we're looking at unified energy control plan, so specifically lockout and tagout. So we've got nothing there's nothing too much to kind of go through on this. Again, we're just going to expand out. You may have noticed that some of the points have got more. They've they've increased. So basically, what we're just looking to do is rather than just have originally when we started out, we just had an action, just a output action, do this or do this. So what we're trying to do with this is, and again, we're going to call upon you guys. We'll probably open up to the floor now, actually. So one bit is around the best use of or the best processes for lockout and tagout throughout the different phases. So throughout commissioning and then into operational again, which touches on what we've just been talking around before. So whether it's what we're looking to try and do is gather data again from our sources, our companies, and obviously yourselves. So if there's anyone that wants to feed into that now, whether it's in the chat or unmute, we're trying to identify what the benefits are. Like, is the best thing to use a paper-based lockout tagout system, a digital lockout tagout system, a combination of the two, and what are the benefits and what are the disadvantages? I think we get so many questions coming in around what about this if we use a digital system? What about this if you use paper? I think that one of the things that we want to get out of this is a half decent white paper, which is a good start of a 10 for anybody that's thinking about what to do in the upcoming with their sites or as they develop the sites. So that's kind of where we want to look with this work stream, getting towards that, and then ideally getting some feedback from people that actually utilize these systems. Again, this isn't commercial. We're not trying to sell products or tout them, but honest, open feedback from people that do utilize these would be more than welcome. If there's anyone on the call now that wants to give any experiences, and we can reach out after around who uses digital lockout tagout tools on this call, who uses paper-based.
There's something in the chat now, Dan from Everling. Could our colleague please share his lotto dot for DC with these differences, if possible? Please send it to X email address. I think that'd be a great opportunity to run through.
Yeah, that's
a future
perfect.
session.
Yeah, I think that would be perfect. That's how we learn, isn't it? Is there anybody on the call that utilizes digital lockout tagout systems? Obviously, we've got MC Dean who talked us through the one that they use, some of the benefits. We probably will revisit that at some point because we got so far through and then cut it short. But there was a lot of feedback and questions that came through after. So we'll probably look at that again in the future. Is there anything else that's come through, Ben?
Yeah, I'm just going to unmute you now, Kevin.
Hey, so I've initiated a couple of our different sites that we have there. The one that I'm a big fan of is through Seam. And so what Seam does is they come in and they review it, and then they provide your procedure, your site-specific procedure to bring that piece of equipment to zero energy. We provide plat cards. They also put QR codes on all the panels. So then you'd also be able to do that. And they also have the checklist. So then the person that's doing the lockout tagout goes through the checklist. So that's the proof that that person had reviewed the procedure and then has like a electronic signature that says, yes, I've reviewed this, and then applied the locks properly that way. And so it also in the US standard, it requires that you have an annual review of your lockout tagout system, and that's an easy way to do it as well.
No, it's really good. I think it's it drives the accountability, doesn't it? That's a big thing. If people feel responsible for a task that they're doing, if they've got to physically do a check that demonstrates that they've reviewed something or done it, that probably drives the accountability and makes people think twice before they do the operation. Do you find that it's a successful approach?
Yeah, for that site, and like part of that is also training and making sure that they're doing that there is a cost to that. And so trying to duplicate that in other clients has been a little bit challenging with that. But you're talking $10 to $15,000 for a pretty decent size data center.
Yeah, so that's probably when we're talking about the advantages and disadvantages, I expect that to be quite a common input from people around the disadvantages. So, and it might be that, and I think that's something that's quite important, isn't it? If you've got a single site and it's an issue, and it is something that you want to control, maybe on your risk assessment, so your time, cost, and effort against the risk, you go, yeah, it's achievable. And to do that, if you've got multiple sites, multiple networks, I think when you start looking at that escalated cost, that's probably going to be a big consideration for people. So it's it's good. I think really good input. Thank you, Kevin. And then there's some stuff going on in the chat, isn't there, around electrical risk assessments.
Yes, so Kevin's put here, for operations, does anybody have an electrical risk assessment checklist? I noticed the safety checklist from earlier. I'm looking to implement a site risk assessment when we take over a site to identify breakers that the incident energy is over 40 cals. And breakers our team will be working on and what the highest exposure or common exposure would be. So the proper Arc Flash PPE can be used instead of just saying we will use a 40 cal suit.
Yeah, I think that comes down to the to making sure that the Arc Flash survey is being done, isn't it? Finalized before handover. So, you're not going to complete a site, then have you shouldn't have unknown instant energy values at that point. You've been going through a process for such a period of time that it should be known. But I see this quite often, Kevin, where there's operational sites and they've got none of the engineering information from the construction. So they ask for Arc Flash PPE, and I'll ask them, what's the instant energy values? That what are you trying to protect people against? And oh, we don't know. It's like, well, they must have them. You must have a design. It hasn't been built on a cigarette packet. It's obviously been designed to an extent, So, but this is really common. I don't see the stuff coming across from construction, in a lot of examples that I've seen. But yeah, so for your point there, typically it's you'd expect if it's in construction that they would have done a level of Arc Flash survey. It might not be, you'd expect it to be finalized. So on completion, they're going to know final cable length. So you're going to know your set impedances, and the final the relay types might have changed over time from the original design to installation. So you will know at that point, you should know everything. So it's ensuring that comes over in the handover process. I think from your side, Kevin, from a FM perspective, if you're then taking over a site that's been operational for a number of years, I think that's quite important to have an established risk assessment checklist. So as part of that process, you do your asset list, your asset verification period to make sure your asset list matches the actual asset list that you've been provided by the client or potential client. And then part of that documentation process would be fault level and Arc Flash surveys to come across, so if there's any underlying issues there that you need to mitigate for your personnel in that sort of FM space, I guess.
Yeah, Dan, what I see usually is, yes, we do have an Arc Flash assessment and risk assessment through that and everything there. It's within 5 years, but our teams aren't aware of it, or we haven't looked at it and said, hey, you know what? These are the breakers that we will generally use, and they're all 7 cal. And so, you know what? We're good with using daily wear at 11 cal in everything that we do. Oh, hey, we have 3 breakers over here that require over 40 cal, and there's no consideration on those 3 breakers there. It's like, oh shit, something happens and we do that. So those are some of the things that I'm seeing out there as well, of instead of like, hey, you know what, let's see what we actually commonly work on, and then see how our PPE matches to that. What I'm seeing out there is, oh yeah, we'll put them in cotton uniforms, and then if they need to do switching or need to do this or that requires arc flash PPE, we're just going to put them in a 40 cal, and that just isn't
Yeah, it's
good.
no, and it's all fine, when everything's when everything's rosy in the garden, but on out of hours when you've had a trip, you've had a fault, which is typically when it happens when people aren't around. It's going to happen at the worst possible time. To then have an extra consideration for the guys of are they protected? And people just want to do the right thing. That's when these things happen, isn't it? It's so you need to prepare for not just the circuit breakers you're going to work on most, but everything that you're going to potentially operate at any point on your network is what you need to take into consideration.
Hey,
Did
Daniel,
Lanny, I was just going to say you had your hand up there. Did you want to chip in there?
I didn't want to interrupt, but can I add a comment here?
Please do.
Yeah, I think it's important that when you are reviewing the arc flash study and you find those exposures that are unusually extreme or out of line with what most of them are, is not just accept them, but to ask questions. Can this be reduced through? And often I've seen this many times that the incident energy can be significantly reduced with a little bit of tweaking on the fuse or the protective relaying or the circuit breaker setting. Can't do it all the time, but I've seen many cases where uh, these high exposures requiring additional measures aren't necessary. And working with the owner or the project engineer or whatever, you may be able to reduce that incident energy level. Okay.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. And any good consultant that's doing your study likely would and should offer, advice on you've got high incident energy values and a recommendation, to try and do that. I think it's good to have that engagement. People often get the study done as if it's just I'm not going to say, yeah, go on, tick box exercise, we'll get the study done. Thank you. We've now got a study. We can tick that off as compliant. But in reality, that is it's a document that's giving you information, and you should use that to make things better. There's recommendations in there. It'll be highlighted to say you've got high levels of instant energy. So no, it's a really good point, Lanny, and appreciate that. Yeah, so we'll follow this up anyway by sending out again something down the line for getting feedback around people and for the persons that chipped in there, appreciate that, and the people that want to share things down the line, again, let us know either in the chat or outside of this, and I think it'd be really good to try and get your experiences within this. Thank you. We'll jump on to workstream 3, which is around arc flash and hazard management, electrical hazard management. So for this area, again, we'll not kind of, I'm just conscious of time. We've got nothing too much to focus on. We were looking at the checklist today, but the increase in areas, or again, we're trying to get more information so that we're working on the right thing. So rather than just having a clear, this is what we're doing, here's an output, we're looking to try and get information around where are the main instant areas that we're looking at. So and what are the best methods for managing the process across the commissioning to operations process for things like arc flash labels through each project phase. So what do people do? Is there some good experiences that you guys on the call have? What works? What doesn't work? What's the benefits and I suppose the drawbacks of each? Again, just to try and establish what people do, because we've seen such a mix of experiences, just even in the chats in the past or in conversations we've had. So it would be good to get your inputs on that of what people do. And as part of the follow-up, when we're looking at instance around electric shock, we're trying to understand where the downside is in the management of standard data. So again, we'll open up to the floor to see if there's anyone that wants to just either chip in or tell us if you'd like to get involved down the line around what methods you put in place for keeping your studies and your arc flash labeling up to date throughout the life cycle of the project. If there's nobody in the chat, obviously we'll just jump on because I think Jose is going to share something. Okie doke.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
keep going, I'd say.
Timings are working good. And again, just to recap, so the guys from MC Dean presented the Arc Flash playbook template that they utilize on the last session. I think it was really good to go through some of those key points, and they have made that available in a sort of in a fairly generic fashion. It is accessible in the share folder that we provide as part of this to people that are registered. Again, with a bit of a caveat, if you're looking to use it, it is available, but it's a general approach. So you would need to tailor that for your company, your provision, your setup, because everyone's different. So that's a bit of a caveat, but it's there. I think it's really good of them to share that out, and it's much appreciated. So yeah, appreciate that. And again, if anyone's got any questions or can't access it, just let us know. So yeah, finally, workstream 4, which is around contractor and competency management. I'll just briefly go through what we're looking to do with the actions, and I'll hand you over to the guys on this work stream just to kind of talk through where they're up to. So the only kind of differences that we're looking at, and again, these aren't finalized, we're just thinking we'll try and get some more data stuff around what that initial, where the inadequacy is in training and how that leads into incidents, whether it's through competency gaps, skill gaps, combination of the both. And we want to try and just work on that to try and, I know we're never going to standardize a final process, but just identify key skills that are creating hazards within the industry. I'll trick you over to Jose and the other guys now. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, so lots of good stuff covered, and it always comes back down to can the people actually do the stuff that we've been talking about? We've identified lots of different ways to do things, and what we're trying to do is make sure we have this standardized, so set of standard practices for the data center industry. And that always starts with a survey. Like, we need the data. we all think we all know the right answer up until somebody again chimes in and says, hey, all that's great except for this. And that part, that except for this, comes from one person in the room. It doesn't come from all of us. Like, all of us know standardly what we should do, but it's the one person that pipes up and says, we need this one piece, and that's the gap. Like, that's literally the gap. And so you need a survey, you need a gap analysis survey, and that's what we've done. So we've created this survey. It's anonymous. So that's first. Like, I just want to be able to say that. There's no emails, there's no company info. It really is just data. We're trying to find out what is happening in the industry, what are the near misses, how many of them, just anything that can give us insight. And then it's not just for us, right? Like, we're gonna compile the data, but then we'll give it back to you, and that'll give you all the insight to the industry as well. So the survey is there. We've only had a few completions, which is how come we don't have anything to share yet. So we wanted to be able to give it back out and have everyone be able to give us any kind of information, or if you can pass it along to whoever is the safety department that would have this information. If you've got real numbers, great. Give us those real numbers. If you've got, professional estimates, give us those numbers. Great. That's valuable insight to the industry. So that's my encouragement. And there's a link. Chad, I know Janine's been helping. Chad, do you have anything else to, pass along? Any encouragement?
No, I think you hit it. Just we really like participation on the survey to identify those opportunities, and so we can build that into the actions that we have listed here on the screen to make sure we have adequate training and skills out there in the workforce.
Sweet.
Yeah, perfect.
We've got a hand raised here, if that's all right.
Yep.
Definitely.
Go ahead, Carl.
Shameless plug. Today just had a book published entitled Resilient Contractor Safety Management, which speaks into a lot of these types of things. 17 chapters that go into that. I wrote 2 of them. It's not data center specific. It's more along the lines of construction, putting together high energy projects. So some of the stuff in there may be useful. The chapters I contributed was contractor selection and how to manage your contractors' instant investigation so you can get good corrective actions.
Stick it in the chat, Carl. Let us know your book. Shameless. Throwing that in
Yeah,
there.
absolutely shameless. And the one thing I can say about Carl and will say about Carl is that Carl is much more of a pragmatist. So there's a lot of information that he covers at a topical level, but it really is in the end for a behavioral change, which is near and dear to me from a training standpoint. I don't care how much you know in your head. I want you to be able to do something with it. So if he's written a book, it'll cover the topic, theoretically from the head, but then it'll be and do this actionable steps. So
yeah, no, I appreciate that, Colin. Really good inputs. And with this as well, we'll share it around with the people that we work with on a regular basis. Jose as well, try and get some meaningful feedback, because I think this data will be really good information to help us focus. And a lot of people as well, we work in silos, don't we? We hate to admit it, but we work in silos, and I think that some people might think, oh, we're doing really well. Some people might think, I think I'm doing well, but I don't, we don't really know where we are. So I think even as a bit of a benchmarking tool for you to gather the data in and then give it back out in some tangible way that, people can think, oh, yeah, I'm not alone. I'm in the same position as other people. Sometimes that gives reassurance as well, to make people focus what you're working on, but also tell you where you're doing things right as well. So, data is good if we use it in the right way, which I'm sure this will be. So again, anyone on the call, Jose's put the link out there, and we'll send it out, Ben, afterwards as well, just to drive that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think that's pretty much us. I think we've covered the work streams. I really appreciate everyone chipping in. That's really what we want more of, because you guys have got the experience. You're doing it every day. Or you've probably got years of experience, or you might only have a couple of years, but specific, that is something that we don't look at on a daily basis. So please keep getting involved and letting us know. And yeah, again, just to finalize, if you can just utilize the end questionnaire, just to let us know we're doing the right things, or anything you want to see down the line, would really appreciate that as well. Has anybody else got anything to add just to finish us off? Are we all good? Anything in the chat there, Ben?
No, all good. I just want to reinforce, if everyone could complete the survey at the end. It's only 4 quick questions, so it'll help us drive the sessions going forward. So that's it.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks very much, everyone. We'll see you next month.